Hi, everybody. I try to say something so everybody can check if the audio is working. Your camera and micro are not active, but you should hear us. Okay. I would start. Hi, everybody. Good morning. My name is Patrizia Bolognesi. Welcome to our webinar. Thank you. Innovation Found Opportunities for the Bio-Based Industries. I wanted to give you some remarks. So the webinar is being recorded. The slides will be sent to you after the webinar, today or tomorrow, and the video will be published on the Diamonds for IF YouTube channel. You will receive from us a QR code, so you can find it at the end. You can add all your questions in the Q&A dedicated session, and we will try to respond immediately in writing. If this won't be able, we will elaborate our answers on the slides and you will receive them. Of course, if you want at the end one-to-one meetings, organize a meeting with us, you will find our email address in the presentation, so you will be able to contact us. Please, your questions all in the Q&A session. This is very important, so then we can have an overview about it. This is our agenda. So I start, and I am today here with my colleagues, Ariane Croker and Barbara Bendout. They will present themselves afterwards. I am the project coordinator of Diamonds for IF project, which is the organizer of the today meeting. Diamonds for IF is an EU-funded project. We are 5 partners in the consortium. 3 of them are industrial partners and are our use cases, and these are Q-Cells, RWE, and RAMS. Then we have also innovation engineering. It is our software developer, and we as PNO Innovation, we are the coordinator of the project, and also we are the Innovation Fund expert consultants. Just to give you an insight, PNO Group has more than 600 employees in more than 10 European countries, and in the latest EF call, 13 out of the 61 selected projects were submitted by PNO Innovation. Which are the goals of Diamonds? We focus on the renewable energy sector, and we try to support the transformation of H2020 research results into Innovation Fund ready projects. We try to overcome the barriers and the challenges that arise from the transfer from the selected R&D results into the successful high-quality EF application. And we also want to support and ensure support the applicants and ensure readiness and feasibility of their project ideas. But also we have tried to create ad hoc, dedicated tools, guideline, and expertises that you can find on our website. I will show it also. And to give you an overview, usually the EF application process can be divided into 6 steps, and support of Diamonds refers to the first 3 steps, which are provided from Diamonds for free. And of course, as I said, tools and guidelines, which you can find on our website. Here's the QR code. You can follow us on LinkedIn for news every week, or subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you can also find our video tutorials regarding the EF application process. So I give the floor to my colleague, Barbara Bendout.
Yes, hello. Thank you. My name is Barbara Bendaut. I'm a senior consultant at PNO Innovation in Düsseldorf. Yeah, let's kick on. So I'm going to introduce you to the Innovation Fund family today. So we have a number of different schemes under the Innovation Fund umbrella. First of all, there is the grant scheme, and then there are also two auction schemes for hydrogen and industrial heat decarbonization. But these auction schemes will not be the main focus today. Today, we are going to talk more or less exclusively about the grant scheme, which is for innovative technologies in all scale sizes of projects in the EU and the European Economic Area, which are Norway, Iceland, and Liechtenstein, with the main objective of reducing GHG emissions. And the budget for this grant scheme comes from the EU ETS, so the emission trading system, and is meant to also contribute to the decarbonization of the sectors that fall under this EU ETS scheme. Next slide, please. Here we have a detailed overview of the different sectors and industries that fall under the EU ETS and therefore are also eligible for Innovation Fund support. And this is also very relevant for the bio-based industries. Here, when we look at this list, there are a number of sectors that are particularly relevant or where bio-based projects could be located. This is the refinery sector, but also the chemical sector or the bioenergy sector. Of course, not excluding that also in the other sectors, bio-based projects could be possible. Next slide, please. Let's say, current call for the Innovation Fund was recently published on the 4th of December, and the deadline for submission is the 23rd of April. The results will then be expected in the fourth quarter of 2026, and the signature of the grant agreement for the selected project would be in Q1, Q2 27. The call has, let's say, a well-known structure. It's very similar to the structure we had last year. So it's defined according to project size into the general decarbonization large scale, mid scale, and small scale. So large scale is for more than 100 million. Mid scale is from 25 till 99 or 20 till 99. And the small scale is as of 2.5 million CAPEX project size. So projects that are smaller than 2.5 million cannot apply. But that's probably also the Innovation Fund is probably too much work for projects of a smaller size. And then we have an additional call topic on clean tech manufacturing. So this is for the manufacturing of components or technologies that can contribute to the decarbonization of the EU ETS sectors. And we also have a call topic for projects that have a slightly lower TRL and are not yet ready for a first commercial implementation. And that is the pilot topic. Next slide, please. So here we have a more detailed comparison of the different core topics. So the general decarbonization in its 3 different sizes, and then the clean tech manufacturing and the pilots. In case that you are already familiar with the Innovation Fund, the changes that were made this year and are new for the current call have been marked in green. For the majority, there haven't been any significant changes, and the majority of the scheme is still exactly as it was last year. What we can see here is that the budget for the general decarbonization topics, it's 1.2 billion for the large topic, 300 million for medium and 100 million for the small scale topic. And the activity that is eligible in each of these three topics is the first commercial implementation of low carbon technologies and processes in all of the ETS sectors that we had in on a previous slide. So this can also cover waste heat utilization, electrification, and energy efficiency within industrial processes and energy systems. This could be carbon capture and storage or carbon capture and utilization. It could be the construction and operation of innovative renewable energy and energy storage technologies. It could be hydrogen applications in industry, or it could be, but this is only applicable for the small scale. This is one of the major changes compared to last year. So for the small scale, also the production of hydrogen is still eligible. And then we can also cover breakthrough technologies in the maritime and aviation sector. And for example, bio-based fuels for maritime and aviation are also a topic that is eligible and has been funded in the past already. So, and the CAPEX, here again, the correct figures for large scale, that's more than 100 million for the large scale topic. For the medium scale topic, it's in the range between 20 and 100 million. And the small scale is as of 2.5 million till 20 million. With regard to technology readiness level, the projects would be expected to be at TRL 6 to 8 when the application is handed in, and then up to TRL 9 when the project has been successfully completed. Then we move on to the clean tech topic. Here we have 1 billion of budget, and this is really for the manufacturing of components, for example, for renewable energy installations, electrolyzers and fuel cells, energy storage solutions, also including electrical vehicle battery cells. Last year, there was still a separate call topic for this. This year, this has been integrated in the clean tech manufacturing call. Heat pumps and recycling and reuse of critical raw materials in the above mentioned topics. And for this call, the minimum size of a project is at least 2.5 million of CAPEX. Then we move on to the pilot topic. This is for the lower TRL projects, so with a TRL of 5 to 7 at application stage, and then maximum TRL 8 at the end of the project. And these projects are about the construction and operation of pilot projects across all of the Innovation Fund sectors. So basically also everything that is covered by the general decarbonization and the clean tech manufacturing topic, but then on a lower TRL. And it focuses on this testing and validating at pilot scale. And what is very important, and this is also a new addition this year, is that the projects may not reach commercial production yet. So if you're producing commercially, you definitely have to orient your site towards the left side, let's say, of this slide. Next slide, please. So this is just a short overview of how typical Innovation Fund projects are structured and how the funding is paid out for these different, let's say, parts of the project. This is very important because this structure is set for all the projects. And if you want to apply for the Innovation Fund, you have to fit your project into this relatively rigid structure. So you start with a feasibility study that you already need to have at application stage and need to hand in as part of your application package. And then once your project has been selected and your grant has been awarded, you start with your first work package, which is the preparation of your project, covering things like engineering, but also the preparation of permits and the closing of all important contracts relevant to your project, for example, for supply, but also for offtake, and also for the technology suppliers that you need to execute your project. All this is done until you reach a milestone of financial close, which must be reached within 48 months after starting the project, and which is a very important milestone because at this point in time, you need to have first FID, so you need to have a committed financing for your project. You need to have all contracts closed for your project. So this again, offtake, supply, and technology. And you need to have all permits that are necessary for the construction and operation of your plant. Only when all these three conditions are fulfilled, the milestone of financial close is deemed to be met. And in theory, up to 40% of the funding can be paid until financial close. However, funding has to be proportional to the cost you have during this period of the project. And what we see from the projects we have been working on in the past years is that this percentage, let's say, usually doesn't reach 40%, but perhaps up to 10% could be realistic before financial close. And what is special about the funding before financial close is that this is not depending on the verified emission avoidance. So even if later during the project, you will not be able to save all the emissions you had projected, you will still be allowed to keep the money that is paid up until financial close. Then after financial close comes the second phase of your project. This is the phase in which you are constructing your facility or your plant. And this phase stops or ends with entry into operation. And of course, with entry into operation, you start, let's say, the commercial operation of your plant, your production of whatever it is that is, let's say, the focus of your project. And then for 5 years, you will operate your plant and yearly report your GHG emission avoidance to the European Commission. So this during this period or these 2 periods, the remaining at least 60% of the funding will be paid out, with the last 10% being reserved for this operational period of 5 years. And or for the pilots, I have to say, all small-scale projects, this is only 3 years, but for the large and mid-scale, this is 5 years. And what is important that the funding you receive during the construction as well as the reporting period depends on your realized GHG emission avoidance. So only if you realize at least 70% of your projected GHG emission avoidance, you will indeed be allowed to keep the complete funding amount. If not, it will be proportionally reduced. Next slide, please. Here, a few statistics. What you can see here is, this is for the last call, so the one that had a deadline this year in April and where the results were published a few weeks ago. So what you can see from this statistic is that this is a very competitive program, at least for the large scale. But that in the medium and small scale, the chances are a bit better, and also for the clean tech manufacturing and the pilots. We had, of course, last year also the EV battery call, but that will not be coming back this year. And then for comparison purposes, on the right side, we have the success rates that we have achieved with the 14 projects that were successful and supported by PNO. So as you can see, luckily we have a much better chances of success. And in case that your project falls under the Diamonds 4IF umbrella, you can also, let's say, benefit from our support funded by diamonds for IF. Next slide, please. So now to make clear or to highlight the chances for the bio-based sector within the IF, what we see is that typically the bio-based industry is eligible for innovation fund funding when they reuse diverse bio-based, also waste-based materials or byproducts once for the substitution of fossil fuel-based products. So if, for example, chemicals or bioplastics. So if you think about the list of these sectors included in the EU ETS and the types of products that are included in the EU ETS scheme, if you substitute one of these, then you can be eligible for IF funding. Or the second, let's say, most clear ally towards IF funding for the bio-waste industry is the production of biofuels. So, for example, biogas, biomethane, or sustainable aviation fuels. Many projects have been funded in this area. And to give you a few examples of what's possible, we'll show you a few examples on the next slides. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, so can you go one back? Thank you. So here we have a number of successful project examples. These are not all, but I think this gives a good overview. So you can see a diverse array of topics. You can probably look at this in more details when we send you the slides, but we, for example, have here biofillers for plastics in the small scale, and we have biomethane in the mid scale. We have high quality cellulose in lignin in the pilot topic, and we have recycling of food waste into biodegradable plastics also in the pilot topic. Next slide, please. Then here we have another project using agri-food waste for the production of biogas and biofertilizers. This was also a small-scale project. We have a large-scale project for the commercial deployment of solid biomass in prior to sustainable aviation fuel technology. And we have another large-scale project for sawmill in forestry residues that are also turned into low-carbon fuels. Next slide, please. So, and these are the projects that were invited for grant preparation in the most recent call. So here, again, we have a project on biomethane and biofertilizer. We have a material, let's say, related project creating a biogenic binder. We have a biogas project. We have a green methanol and biomethane project. We have another biofuels project, a biorefinery project, again biofuels, and then last but not least, a sustainable aviation fuel projects. And just for your information, 2 of these projects have been supported by us. Next slide, please. With this, I'll hand over to my colleague Ariane.
Hello. Yeah, my name is Ariane Kroker. I'm also senior consultant at PNO Innovation. I'm placed in Leipzig in Germany. I've also a lot of experience with the Innovation Fund grants and also with the sector. So yeah, we have certain conditions where we can support projects, and of course your project must also be in a dedicated stage that is eligible and fit with the Innovation Fund core requirements. So the first one is that you need to have at least TRL 6 to 7. So this is also very early, you would go for a pilot topic with a lower TRL, and if you intend to have to achieve TRL 9 at the end of the project, then the other topics would be suitable for you. So you can come from other funding, of course. Your technology can have been funded in earlier stages of development in other funding schemes of the European Union or in any other national grant scheme. And a small pilot demonstration can also be available. It must be available because you need respective data and process flow data, whatever, from a working pilot environment. To receive also the support in our Diamonds for AF project, where we referred to in the beginning in these application stages, in these early application stages, it is useful to have a reference to an H2020 funded project. So you see here also from the timeline wise that in results from projects having been funded under H2020, maybe in the right maturity to come now for commercialization, and the market readiness after the research development stage. Next, please. So essentially, Innovation Fund has a strict funding regime. And as you have learned, it is dedicated to various sectors. There are other criteria that play a role, and my colleague will put later on some details on the what criteria, but taken together, you need to belong to one of these eligible sectors or to contribute to the decarbonization of these ETS sectors. The project must be located in Europe, so the company as an applicant can come from all over the world, but the project must be realized in Europe, in the named countries. And one of the most important things in Innovation Fund is to realize GHG emission savings compared to a scenario where your project would not be realized. So if the project is absent, this is in general the reference case for the GHG emission savings. And if the project is going to be realized, you can deduct absolute and relative GHG emission savings, which is one of the most important criteria to be selected under Innovation Fund. The fund has it in its name that the project must be innovative in a way that it is on a higher TRL, but it significantly differs from what is on the market today, from what is already in demonstration, for example, what is already funded under Innovation Fund. So you need to provide a dedicated study comparing your solution towards those of the markets and large-scale technology demonstrations to prove your innovativeness. And as my colleague also mentioned before, is that this financial close combines not only internal FID, but also permits and contracts. And it is limited to a duration of 4 years, which may sound long, but essentially some of those projects that have started 4 years ago may probably not be continued under the Innovation Fund scheme because they reach now this 4-year framework, and the program cannot provide any prolongation beyond this preparatory stage. And so this is a very high barrier to proceed with a funded project if you don't be ready for financial close. And you have also like not as these restrictions, but depending on your financial close, of course, you should strive for as fast as early start of construction to get your project into operation in years where the Commission counts with significant emission savings. To receive support under our funded project, additionally, this project must be connected to the renewable energy sector. And as I mentioned before, it is required to have a reference to H2020 funded projects, but this can also come from your wider consortium. So this is a strict condition, but it can usually be fulfilled in a European network of applicants. Yes, next, please. Within our project, which is targeted to promote Innovation Fund, but also to enable applicants to get acquainted with these requirements, with a very complex set of application documents and regulations. We produced a video series, which is accessible via this QR code or directly via our website. And there you find essential parts of the grant scheme explained in short videos of a maximum of 5 minutes. These topics are covering business plan, the feasibility study, the calculation of cost, the calculation of GHG emission avoidance, and the project planning itself. So you're invited to have a look at these videos and to share it also with your partners, because there is a lot of practical expertise in explaining those complex guidelines and requirements, and gives you a very quick kickstart to the grant scheme itself. Next, please. So if you feel like addressed by and interested into the Innovation Fund grant scheme and looking maybe for an application in the next round, which is currently open and will close on April 23rd in 26. So it should, of course, you should fulfill the requirements that have been already mentioned. Furthermore, you should be able to define your idea in a way that is not a research proposal. It is more or less a business case, but with some innovative elements and focusing also on GHG emission savings. So it's a very pragmatic approach, and it needs to be developed also from financial perspective. If you need a consortium or certain partners to realize your project, then this consortium should be already defined. So the time is too short to run now out to look for partners, for potential partners. Then this would be definitely the case for next year's round. So if you have your partners at hand, if you need any, you can also apply as a sole applicant. Then this should be defined in a preliminary agreement because you are going together for this application. As mentioned before, the financial part plays a huge role in this Innovation Fund application because you will receive funding based on the so-called funding gap. That means there's a business plan with complete calculations on future cash flows, revenues, benefits, costs, whatever must be available over the lifetime of the plant, and then you will be able to fulfill all the other requirements that are put by the funding on you. Of course, also a certain commitment of your financing partners should be there. So you are expected to provide a proof of the interest of your financing partners. That can be your shareholders in a larger company, that can be equity providers, that can also be debt providers, depending on your financing structure. So it is necessary to prove their commitment at application stage and to confirm this commitment in a stronger way at the time of grant agreement signature. So not only from the finance side, but also from this side and or from all other sides of your projects, covering the whole value chain from supply of, let's say, energy or material flows to processing and to finally delivery and sales of final products. A set of letters of support must be available and make your project realization credible. And yes, also you may have heard about this or you have experience with this. An innovation fund application covers several hundred pages, but essentially there's complex work comprising a set of your organizational entities from business development, technology, finance, and project planning, for example. So it's a huge effort and covers several hundred hours of internal capacity to be ready for the deadline. Next, please.
Thank you. So now I'm going to tell you a bit about the award criteria and also the GHG avoidance calculation and the relevant cost calculation of the Innovation Fund, just to give you a tiny insight into the complexity of this program and why you would need so much resources to prepare an application. So the first award criterion, which needs to be covered also in the feasibility that is to be handed in as part of the Innovation Fund application, is the degree of innovation. For this criterion, you need to demonstrate that your project goes beyond the state of the art, in particular at the EU level. For small scale, this can also sometimes be at country level. And what is also important, if your project is similar to one of the previously funded IF projects, you have to explain in detail how your project is different. This is this award criteria gives you up to 15 points, which is about 20% of the evaluation. So then we have the next criterion, which is the GHG emission avoidance. This is divided into absolute and relative GHG emission avoidance. We'll hear more about these in the following section, and also a part of the score that depends on the quality of your calculation and the assumptions included in that calculation. Here we have in total 12 points. Then the third criterion is maturity. This is about the technical maturity of your project. So how far advanced you are with developing your technical solution. Then the financial maturity, which is about, on the one hand, your business case and how well you have defined your business case and how far you can underpin all assumptions in your business case. And also the financing plan of your project. So how robust the plan is that you have for financing your project. And last but not least, we have operational maturity, which is more the practical implementation of your project. So whether you have a good planning for all the different steps you need to take until, let's say, entry into operation and the operational years of your project. Here you can also receive maximum 15 points. Then the next criterion is replicability. So this is about, let's say, the wider impact of your project. The first part of this deals with efficiency gains and multiple environmental impacts. And the second part is about your project's contribution to Europe's industrial leadership and competitiveness. Also here, maximum 15 points. And then the last of the award criteria is cost efficiency. This is about how much funding you request per ton of CO2 saved, and also about the quality of your cost calculation. And just a hint, of course, the less funding you request per ton of CO2 saved, the higher your score on this criterion will be. And then there are also 3 bonus points. If you saw last year's course, you will notice some differences. But this year, the bonus points are first for net carbon removals, which is a relative GHG emission avoidance of historically at least about 110–112%. Then the second bonus point can be received for projects implemented by small and medium enterprises according to EU definition. And the last bonus point is for the maritime sector. Next slide, please. So then we move on to the GHG avoidance. This, your GHG emission avoidance has to be calculated with an Excel calculator that is provided by the European Commission. And then also this comes along with the GHG emission avoidance methodology, which is a long document explaining all the different aspects you have to consider during your calculation. But what is important is that you cannot estimate the emission avoidance as you deem fit, but you have to follow this standardized framework. And there are a number of steps that you have to follow in order to correctly calculate your GHG emission avoidance. So first is that you have to understand your project and classify where in the different options of the methodology your project should be located. Then you have to understand and define the GHG emissions and the boundaries of your GHG calculation. You have to identify an appropriate reference scenario and then complete the GHG calculator also for your project scenario. And then once you are done, you need to upload the calculator to the portal and submit it as part of your application package. Next slide, please. The GHG emission avoidance is very important. First of all, of course, for the GHG emission avoidance criterion that we just heard about, where for the absolute GHG emission avoidance, you can get 2 points based on where you're located in your sector, let's say. So this is compared within your sector. Then also the relative GHG emission avoidance, which is dependent on the amount of relative GHG emission avoidance that you can achieve. So as of above 90%, you will probably get the full 5 points for this aspect. And then, of course, the quality of the calculation, which will be an additional 5 points of the evaluation. Then also for the bonus points, for the first bonus points, of course, your absolute or your GHG emission avoidance calculation is very relevant as well, because here for the net carbon removals, as I said previously, this is usually a relative GHG emission avoidance of at least 112%. And then, but also for the cost efficiency criterion, the calculation is very important because, as I said previously, the cost efficiency is the amount of funding that you request per ton of CO2 saved. So also here, let's say the amount of funding that you can request while still receiving a good score on cost efficiency depends very much on how much GHG emissions you save over 10 years absolute. Next slide, please. So here I'll show you the formula about how these different types of avoidance are calculated. So for the absolute GHG emissions avoidance, that's your reference scenario minus your project scenario. So basically how much you save compared to the reference scenario that Ariane already mentioned in her presentation. And the relative GHG emissions avoidance is the, let's say, percentage of your avoidance compared to the reference scenario, usually between 1 and 0 or 100%. But if you achieve net carbon removals, these could actually go beyond 100%. And actually, biomass is one of the ways how you can achieve these net carbon removals. For example, if you would capture CO2, capture and store CO2 from an bio-based process, this could easily lead to a larger amount of net carbon removals. And what is important is to know is that there are thresholds for the minimum avoidance that is necessary in the different topics. So generally for the net zero technologies, decarbonization topics, small, medium, and large scale, the minimum is 50%. Although, to be honest, most projects that we work on have significantly higher avoidance. And for the pilot projects, the absolute minimum is 75% of relative GHG emission avoidance. And then what is also very important is that if your calculation is very poorly done and you have low quality of data, or your assumptions are not well explained, this could even lead to the rejection of your proposal. And all these calculations in the EU calculator are made for a period of 10 years after entry into operation. Next slide, please. What is important is that the calculator does not only consider CO2 emissions, but also other types of greenhouse gas emissions that are also covered by the EU ETS. So this could also be methane, nitrous oxide, hydrofluorocarbons, perfluorocarbons, and sulfur hexafluoride. Anyhow, all these will be expressed in CO2 equivalents. And there's also information in the methodology of how these have to be dealt with. Next slide, please. Then we move on to the relevant cost calculation. This is the other very important calculation that each Innovation Fund project has to hand in. This is about your business case. Also here, the Commission provides a very extensive Excel template that you need to fill in. So you cannot fill in or provide a calculation according to your own template. You have to use this Commission template. And what is important is that in this net present value calculation, in that calculator, you need to present a negative business case. So only if your CAPEX and OPEX are greater than your revenues and a financing gap exists, you will be eligible for funding. And the same then, let's say, if your project is too profitable and you have relevant cost and you do not have relevant cost and there is no gap, then you would not be eligible for funding. The Commission would assume that you are profitable and that you do not require EU support. Next slide, please. Although, by the way, what we have to add about this is that this is in the calculator provided by the European Commission, and that what we have seen over the years in the past is that, I mean, there is a lot of room to, let's say, look at your figures and include figures in a different way to, let's say, present your project with a funding gap. So it's even if you think that your project is profitable, when you look at it carefully and we insert your figures into the EU calculator, we might still be discovered that you have some relevant cost. So that's not, let's say, for you to give up now if you think that your project might be too profitable. This should be checked first. Good. Then on how to estimate the relevant cost and the funding. So what is very important is that your relevant costs are the basis for requesting funding. So they are the eligible cost you have within the Innovation Fund. The calculation is made over a period of 10 years from project start over the preparation and construction period and the then 10 years of operation. And what goes into the calculation is the CAPEX in undiscounted form, and then a discounted OPEX minus the discounted revenues and discounted benefits, giving you the relevant cost. And then the maximum funding that you can apply for is 60% of these relevant costs. Although sometimes to increase your chances of success with regard to the cost efficiency ratio, it might even be beneficial to request slightly less funding than this possible maximum of 60%, because it will give you an advantage in the competition. Thank you. Next slide.
Yes. So I make it short because you heard a lot about this. I already mentioned that the efforts are relatively high to prepare an application. So that's not the only difficulty to overcome. So there are also, of course, and other external factors that make your life not easier, let's say it like that. You may have a market with rapidly changing conditions as we experienced it maybe the last years. Well, the PV market in Europe, but also other sectors are affected by global market developments and can be affected, which brings you up to a position that numbers that would have been valid a few months ago are not reliable anymore. So, and you're, on the other hand, in an innovation fund application, you're expected to make estimate over a development of more than 10 years. So this is a contradiction, but essentially it is about how to get in a position to make some confident assumptions, even if you know it is only a one-shot perspective. But this is one of the parts that needs to be discussed in the company, and you need to find a solution to present a viable scenario. You also depend on policy developments in this same respect. Timing is really critical because you have this deadline only once a year. The program is developing, and the budget is now also, it is not spent already, but we are now in the second phase of Innovation Fund, so competition will increase, and you should consider your timing if you go for an application this year, next year, whenever. As well, resources, I talked about this, and also, of course, this is one where we, as a project, also work on, is to provide the essential knowledge that is needed to participate in this grant scheme. Next, please. Yeah, there's a large set of templates provided by the Commission. I just jump over a few points on this slide. However, some of these requirements are not substantiated with templates. If we go with support from PNO, we can also prepare a lot of a set of templates for these non-defined annexes. And of course, you need also more insight into the interdependency of these documents, which is not very self-explaining. What is very important from the beginning on is the work on the letter of support from the financial shareholders, because they, of course, need to know the scenario where you go for the application and need to prove their commitment exactly for this project and not in general. So that's highly important. And of course, the financial model itself takes a lot of knowledge and time to be developed ready for an incredible application. So let's say finally the Commission understands itself not as a pure grant provider in this context. It understands itself as a co-investor, and so you should go for this application. So these are my last words on this part, and now we are open for your questions.
Yes, I have activated your microphone, or at least I gave you the possibility to activate it. We have 6 minutes left. If you want to make a live question, just raise your hand and please. We can. Any other questions? Don't be shy.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you guys for the presentation. It's really detailed and we learned a lot. I'm curious a little bit about the level of feasibility that we have to show, because when we're constructing a site, does this mean like the site feasibility and technical feasibility, these all have to be done with a certified external party, or is this something we just show that we think it is feasible? To what extent do we have to show the feasibility?
Shall I, Ariane, or do you want?
Yeah, you can.
Okay. So as part of the application, you have to submit a 60-page, or let's say the maximum page limit is 60 pages, but that's what in most cases you usually reach. So you have to submit a 60-page feasibility study. This does not need to be a feasibility study provided by an external vendor. We usually produce them together with the applicants ourselves. But it needs to be covered details about the sites, the infrastructure at the site, how your, let's say, transportation connections are at the site, so everything that would seem relevant to the feasibility of your project. And then it must also explain, let's say, the technological design of your facility, and a description of the different, let's say, components of that design, and then also things like a heat and mass balance for your plant. So it needs to be reasonably detailed. Does that answer your question?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's helpful.
Any other questions?
Seems to be.
So,
Okay.
Then I jump in with one of the most posed questions by our applicants about payments. So Innovation Fund is a grant scheme where you receive no prepayment. You need to finance the whole project, covered by your other financing sources, debt, equity, own cash flows. And you can use Innovation Fund grants in the later phase to cover some parts of these cash flows, but essentially before financial close, you will receive no external money from the authority. During the construction time, you can only ask for a limited share of this money, and at most, the largest part of the funding will only be available after proving that you entered in operation. So that's very important to know, and also for your financing partners, highly relevant.
Barbara, do you want to highlight some other important points?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So
I would say,
if you don't have any other questions, I thank you again for your interest and your participation. Thanks to my PNO colleagues for the webinar and the explanations. And see you soon. Don't hesitate to contact us if you have any other further question or interest in an EF application. Bye-bye.
bye.
Bye.
Bye, thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.